Greetings, gentlemen. I wanted to make a video on a topic that I've seen even normies discuss from time to time. I've seen this discussed to some degree in the manosphere from kind of a slightly different point of view, but I've seen this discussed in several different contexts, which is, can men and women be friends? And of course, feminists will frame it in the sense that all men want is sex and all that, and I'm going to get into the particulars. But question is, can men and women actually be friends? And specifically from the self-aware man's perspective, right? The perspective of a man that understands female nature, that knows where things stand between men and women in society today, and is basically aware of what it is that women can do and how different men and women are in terms of their nature. That's the perspective that I'm trying to come from here in answering the question, can men and women be friends? And to give a sort of direct answer to that, yes, I think it's possible, technically speaking, for men and women to be friends. Some of the people that watch this video may disagree with me, but I do think it's technically possible, but I think it's very rare for several different reasons. And I'm going to list 3 reasons in this video. There are at least 3 reasons that I've come up with for why it is that men and women can't really be friends in many cases in practice based on how things really work between men and women, at least in our society, at least in this culture today. The first reason, and this mostly is on men's side of the equation, although it definitely can happen the other way around, is if you find someone sexually attractive, you're not really just friends. You're friends with an asterisk. You're friends with a footnote or several footnotes, or really just a dynamic that really changes the nature of your connection with that person. And just looking at it from my own point of view, if I'm being honest, I look at women aged 18 to 40 or so, and even despite a lot of women in this society, and people in general for that matter, letting themselves go physically or having, obvious mental health issues they make readily apparent, I still probably find at least a third of the women aged 18 to 40 sexually attractive at some level, to some extent or degree. It can work the other way around, where a woman finds you attractive, or you may find each other attractive, but the problem is that that's not a platonic friendship. You're not really friends with someone when you want to get in their pants, right? And to be fair, again, because men tend to be less picky, men tend to find a variety of women attractive, heterosexual men, obviously. You can't really be friends with someone that you find attractive in that way, because there's always going to be that added element, even if neither you nor the other person act on it in any way. Even if you agree that you find each other attractive, but there's really nothing that is worth pursuing because you're with someone else in a relationship, or you're just not willing to act on that, or if you do act on it and you're friends with benefits, that's just it. You're friends with benefits. You're not really just platonic friends. And so it's not the same thing as finding qualities in the other person that you find admirable, right? And having a sense of camaraderie and having the other person's back and having common interests together. And I'm going to get into that as well in this video. But instead, it's I'm friends with you because I find you sexually attractive, and I probably wouldn't associate with you if it weren't for that. Or even if I would, it would take on a totally different form. Because I find you attractive sexually, there's this added element and dynamic at play that really makes it not a pure friendship. So that's the first reason that men and women can't be friends. Heterosexual men and women find each other attractive. Men in particular, in my view at least, find a wide variety of women attractive in a lot of cases, whereas women are more, they're attracted to Chad, but other men maybe not so much. But men and women find each other attractive, obviously, and if that's the case, or even if you just like her, and maybe the feeling's not reciprocated, that can put you in the friend zone, but that's not an actual friendship. That's something that's much, much worse than an actual friendship, right? That's not a healthy position to be in. Even if you're a girl that's attracted to a guy and somehow he puts you in a friend zone, that's not really friendship in a real sense, in my opinion. So that's the first reason why men and women have a very difficult time being friends. If you're even at the level where if you were drunk and she was drunk, one of you would try to fool around, or you would end up fooling around with one another, then you're not friends. The only way that you could be friends is if you are so not attracted to that person and she feels likewise, that you would not fool around even if you were both plastered drunk, then maybe you have a chance of being friends because you're not sexually attracted to one another. Otherwise, I have to say that precludes any actual friendship because of that added sexual element that's going to prevent that from really being the case. The second reason why men and women can't be friends, and again, this comes from the perspective of a self-aware or red-pilled, if you want to call it that, guy's perspective, is that for the most part, women see men as utility objects at best or nothing objects at worst, if you want to say that one is better or worse than the other. Women typically only see men for what those men can do for them. Well, part of a friendship, a core element of friendship is having the other person's back, right? Reciprocity, not wanting to exploit each other, having that sense of camaraderie and respect for the other person as a person. Well, if someone sees you as a utility object, that's not going to happen, is it? You're not going to have that respect. You're not going to have that reciprocity. And because, frankly, a big part of female nature is to just see men for what those men can do for them, and if they don't see that those men can do anything for them, then just not seeing them as anything at all, really, and wanting to avoid those men, not even really seeing those men as fully human, well, you can't really have a friendship on that basis, can you? And I would argue, and this is where some men may disagree with me, that this is not inevitable with women, that women can learn to respect men and to see men as human in a full sense, but that this doesn't usually happen. My view is that everything in society teaches women not to develop that way of perceiving men, of viewing men. Everything in our society teaches women to see men only as utility objects or as nothing objects if those men can't conceivably do anything for them to their advantage. I'd argue women can evolve beyond that, right? Just like men can evolve in a similar way to not seeing women as just sexual things. But the environment that we have teaches women that it's okay to see men as utility objects, while as a man, if you see women as a sex object, you're a pig and you're bad. And I've already discussed the sexual element at play and how that in itself does, in my view, preclude friendship between men and women from taking place where it is applicable. But this is another huge problem, is that even if you don't see the woman as attractive and she doesn't find you as attractive as a man, but at the same time, she doesn't give a shit about you, and maybe she hates men because she's listened to all the feminist rhetoric her whole life. Or maybe at the very least, she wants a man to be a provider and protector, and she's a traditional woman, and she's essentially taking a traditional or conservative approach to how she views men in relationships. It doesn't matter, or even her male friends, right? In this case, it doesn't matter. She's not going to see you as fully human, and there can be no true camaraderie or reciprocity or mutual respect because she's only going to see what you can do for her, and that's only a one-sided thing, not a true friendship. So that's the second major reason why women and men have a very difficult time really being friends in practice, is that most women don't really want to be your friend. They just want to basically get whatever advantage they can from you and be very solipsistic in many cases and only think about themselves. And I look back on my attempts to be friends with women, and these first 2 points that I've made have applied, right? Either I found them cute or attractive and I really wanted to be in something more with them. And this is back before I had a clue of where things actually stood between men and women, before I was red-pilled, so to speak, at all. Either I actually found them attractive and that's why I wanted to be their friend, or I just assumed that there was this reciprocity and this sort of level playing field, when in reality, a lot of these women, most women, only want to be your friend when they benefit more from it. And as soon as they no longer benefit, I've looked at women in my past that I've been friends with, when I no longer was of benefit to them, well, we're not friends anymore. How dare you? Or whatever excuse they could come up with to have some sort of plausible rationale for no longer being my friend. When they no longer felt they could benefit from me, they were no longer my friend. When I could help them with some school assignment, or I could help them essentially be an emotional tampon, or whatever the case may have been, then we were friends, right? But the rest of the time we weren't. My ex-girlfriend, at times where we were supposedly friends or on friendly terms in the past, same thing, right? It was all just about her benefit. And this type of mentality simply cannot be the basis of an actual friendship. That's the point that I'm making. If women see men as utility objects, which they generally do, you can't be friends with a utility object. There's no reciprocity or mutual respect involved with that. The final, third main reason why men and women have a very difficult time being friends in practice is even if you're not attracted to her and she's not attracted to you, and even if she's actually a cool person, or it seems that she is, you can assume that she's not being a chameleon for the moment to try to get something from you, or even if she's had your back with things in the past and it's like she's actually been on good terms with you, men and women just are too different from one another in many cases to be friends. They have different interests, they have totally different experiences. Life is perceived in a much different way, and I'm not going to get into that too much here because there have been others that have talked about how indeed men and women are like apples and oranges. Yeah, we're both fruit, but we're not at all similar in many ways, if you want to use that analogy. The reality is that a lot of the time, we're just not interested in the same stuff. And so the practical aspect of being friends and hanging out, even if there's no sexual dynamic, and even if this person's a cool person, are you really interested in the same things? Do you really want to go to events with this person, knowing that you don't want to get with them sexually, but that they're into all kinds of generally feminine things that you're not into? Are you really going to cultivate a friendship that's going to really be anything more than just basic level, right? Even if the other two issues that I've discussed with sexuality and only seeing men for what they can do for you from a woman's point of view, even if those can be overcome, why are you being friends with a woman when you have nothing in common with her? If it's not to get sex, and if she actually is willing to treat you well, that's great. But what is the basis of that friendship? What is the basis of any sort of camaraderie, any sort of mutually, hey, we get each other's point of view and we have these shared experiences? What's the basis of that when you don't have shared experiences and your interests are totally different, totally dissimilar to the woman that you want to potentially be friends with, right? What's the value there when you really don't have that much in common? And so again, to conclude this video, I do believe that men and women can technically be friends when all these things that I've mentioned can be overcome. Maybe she's a lesbian. Maybe she thinks like a guy, right? That's the most common example of where maybe you could be friends with a woman. It's like you don't find each other attractive at all, and she actually sees men as human beings because for whatever reason she's wired to think more like a guy to begin with. And you have those common interests, again, because she has that sort of more of a masculine way of looking at things. Maybe in that case, you could be friends, right? And she didn't have to be a lesbian. I just threw that out there as an example, as what could potentially be an exception, what could potentially be a viable friendship with a woman. But this is very rare for all of these things to really be at play or really be truthfully going on at the same time. You wouldn't sleep with her. She doesn't want to sleep with you. She doesn't see you as just a utility object, and you actually have things in common that you can have the basis of a friendship on. The thing about all of this is that, yes, technically these things can be in place, but aren't you better off just having guy friends? And there have been others within MGTOW or within the men's community that have discussed this in the past better than I can probably. It might have been Spetsnaz, actually. Why not just be friends with guys? You don't have the added sexual element if you're heterosexual, obviously. You don't have the, well, if this guy just decides to screw you over, society's going to have his back thing going on. No. For the most part, guys have to play by reasonably fair rules, and if they don't, they can expect you to not be their freaking friend anymore. With women, it's just, oh, I'm going to blame you because you did something in a lot of cases. And again, there has to be that reciprocity from the beginning or you're not going to be friends. There have to be sort of rules to how you interact with one another, and if those rules aren't followed, then you can feel perfectly fine telling your so-called friend to go fuck himself when you're dealing with guys. But with women, there's the added element of society having her back, of her being able to see you as a utility object, once she no longer benefits from the supposed friendship. And just again, the lack of common interest that typically exists anyway between a particular man, if he's an average man, and the average woman, right? And so the conclusion is that technically, in my opinion, men and women can be friends, but not if you're dealing with the average woman out there. And the sort of final thought for this video that I want to illustrate is most of the time, if you try to be friends with a woman, it's going to blow up in your face from a guy's perspective. Most of the time, it's going to be one-sided. Women are very good at knowing if you're sexually interested in them, and so they're going to try to exploit that to put you in the friend zone, so to speak, but that's not the same at all as being actual friends. And most of the time, it's just going to backfire. My experiences in the past of trying to be friends with women, unless it was a particular type of woman, it's just not going to really be a friendship. It's going to be, oh, you're sexually interested in her and she knows it, so she's your friend so that she can get stuff from you. Or, yeah, you're on good terms, but you really don't have any common interests, and so there's really no sense of camaraderie that you could have with a guy that has your interests and your perspective and experiences on a variety of things in life. Or even if it's just common hobbies, common traits, whatever, right? It's very rare to find a woman that actually has your back in a friendship or as a friend, whom you're not sexually attracted to and who's not attracted to you either, and who actually has shared values, shared experiences, things in common, and isn't going to use you. It's very rare to meet a woman like that. And it becomes very similar to a Nawalt question beyond a certain point of, well, maybe not all women are incapable of being your friend, but you're really better off in most cases not putting any sort of special effort into trying to be friends with a woman. If it happens in that sense. If you do meet a girl that actually treats you as a friend, that's great. But she needs to do that consistently, and you can kind of really be skeptical of it, because in a lot of cases she won't have your back when you really need her as a friend. In a lot of cases your male friends won't have your back when you need them as a friend. But with women there are these added complications. Yes, technically in my view men and women can be friends, but it is very rare for these reasons. Let me know what you guys think. Am I wrong that they can be friends at all? Do you have female friends that actually have your back? You're not attracted to them and they're not attracted to you, and you can basically see them in a similar way as you see your guy friends? Or is that not your experience, and in most cases just trying to cultivate any friendship with a woman like that really tend to blow up in your face? Let me know what you guys think. I just thought I'd give my answer to that question of, can men and women be friends? Technically yes, but in practice I think it's very rare.